Now for everybody,
Sorry about that.
if you want to see me in person, let's see. I'm trying looking for my screen. Let's see. Pause. Questions and answers. Oh, right there. Good. All right. Okay. Good. The panel's coming up.
And everybody says, I see bridge. Me too.
Okay. I've got a questions and answers screen here. Let me go up here.
Right. And
And
I'll be handling the Q&A and manning the chat, and you can just go ahead with
all
it.
right. So I don't need to worry about the chat. So you took my chat away from me.
I didn't, but that's okay.
Okay.
It,
All
it
right.
goes when you're sharing your screen. You can hit,
Okay.
or you're on Windows, Alt H to
Alt H. All right.
chat.
Let's see.
There you go.
There it is. Oh yes, I like it. All right, I
Mhm.
have it. Okay, that scared me a little bit. It's kind of like the chat box. I can't see everybody's questions.
No
Okay,
problem.
cool. Let's see. More people are coming in here. More Field Government
Hi,
Effects.
Jennifer.
Mr. Phil Government Effects from Twitch. Welcome. Just posted a link to Facebook. Thank you very, very much. And the Luma Graphic. Hey man, he says Steve is the man. See, that's the type of promoter I need. Hire this person. Let's see who else is on here. It's Curtis Rhodes. Welcome. Um, let's see, boss of press sempre. I don't even know what that is. Welcome. GS1000 is here. Bandala is here. Mr. Phil, the government's here. And also Remestino, welcome. And Shivan, I think it is. I think that's Ivan. Welcome. There's a lot more on here, but it doesn't show all in my chat box. Um, all right, what do you want to do,
We
Lisa? You
are
want
ready to get started. So let me go ahead and get started by saying welcome, welcome, welcome. It is good to virtually see you this evening. I know it's been a long time since we've all been able to get together, but we're so glad that you joined us here in this virtual environment. This is apparently our new norm for a little bit of time. And we are just really happy to be able to get back into the swing of things, get creative again, and get this started with Stephen Burns, who is a phenomenal digital artist. You guys know him. I don't need to really introduce him, but he's here to do some amazing things. He's going to be leading our presentation tonight. I will just double check and make sure that everybody's okay. If you can see the Zoom control bars at the bottom of your screen, please make sure that you can see the chat window, the Q&A, and the participants slash attendees will show who's available. I'm not sure if everybody gets to see all of that. We have quite a few folks that are here from all over the country. That is amazing. I see Hannah, I see Jennifer Cohen, I see Andrew Kavanaugh, I see lots of cool
Oh
people.
my gosh, Jennifer
It's
is here.
amazing. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. And we're gonna go ahead and get this started. I'm keeping an eye out on the chat and the Q&A tonight. And Stephen is streaming and ready to roll.
Okay, well, gosh, it's it's an honor to be here. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Jennifer Cohen. It's great to see you here as well. Wow. Okay, so just to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown, I am actually streaming off of on the two networks. One is Twitch, and the other one is right here on Zoom for the LA Web Professionals User Group. This is sponsored by the LA Web User Professionals Group, and it is going to be based on enhancing your photography in some very interesting ways. Now, I want to just share a little bit as to who I am, and I'm going to go over here to my Behance site. I'm an Adobe educational leader. I speak for Adobe from time to time as well. So I guess I would be considered one of those unpaid evangelists. so I'm a huge fan of what Adobe has done for the creative community, because this day and age, digital has created a brand new breed of artists. Those who would never pick up a brush and oil paints will now do it digitally in programs like Photoshop or Painter or many others. Those who would not pick up a chisel and hammer to make sculptures out of stone will now do it in the 3D program. Okay, those who have done photography traditionally will now do it digitally. In Photoshop, it's going to be their program of choice. And there's a lot of programs out there, but the bottom line is that we are we're doing this all digitally, and that is producing a whole new type of artist. Okay. Now, ask me questions anytime. If I'm on Twitch here as well, twitch.tv/Chrome Illusion, CHROME capital ALLUSION. All right, now, and I will go ahead and also and type it into the chat box for the Zoom people as well. Oh, I actually just did that. Okay, so I want to share with you my Behance page just very quick to kind of give you an idea of what I do. Um, I'm going to kind of show you some of the photographic work, which we're going to be tackling that today. I teach consistent workshops where we go into different national parks or just locations in the country, and learn to enhance our skills as photographer, enhance our eye as photographer, because what we do is about vision. It's about our personal vision. Okay. As many Photoshop presentations as we all witness out there, they talk about technique quite a bit. But today I want to kind of start sharing with you something else about vision, how to make your work more expressive. This is some work that I did in Death Valley. I'll just show you a few of those. There's another example. You probably saw this on the promotional board for the LA Web Developers Group, professional group. So what I'm very interested in, well, let me back up a little bit. I went to school for photography, achieved a certificate, worked under photographers. With fine art was always my passion. I showed in galleries all around the world. And then that led to producing books. And then books led me to working with Adobe. And that led me into, what I'm doing today. And I love what I do. So this is a shot that was done up in the Central Coast, probably more Northern California, and the Bay Area in Santa Cruz area. So my goal is to inspire people to learn to see differently through the camera. Okay, so this is some examples of some of the photography, and let me actually share with you other styles of work that I do. Let's kind of close this out here real quick. I'm also very interested in illustration. I'll show you a little bit of what I do there. And this is a combination of 3D, digital painting, photo compositing. And as I scroll down,
Stephen, we need you to unmute. Sorry.
gotcha. I don't know why I'm muted. So everybody can hear me now, all right? Well, Twitch people is okay. I'm good now. Okay, I know Twitch can hear me. I guess it was the other platform, Zoom.
No, you were on just for you went off for just a split second, but I needed to have you unmute yourself. You're good.
Okay, fantastic. So as I was sharing, I like to work with a variety of different mediums in digital, 3D, digital painting, photography, anything to basically express my personal vision, right? So is another example here. This is a combination of painting, compositing, paint, and no 3D here. This is all 2D in Photoshop. And this piece is not even finished yet. This one I did when I was actually presenting for Adobe on Adobe Twitch. So Adobe Twitch Live, I was one of their presenters. And this was a fun one here where I used a combination of Fuse, Photoshop, digital painting to create something kind of fun. Here's another example, a combination of 3D, digital painting, and also photography. This was a 3D ship I actually created in the 3D program of choice, which I use Lightwave. That is all created from scratch in Lightwave. The planet, the meteor is all created in 3D. And one day we'll come back with another presentation for Daniel and this group. All right, now I can show you this all day. You guys know the website is behance.net. and I will let me go back a little bit, and I will drop this link in both Twitch as well as inside of Zoom. I'll do that now so you guys have this link so you can go there on your own. Okay, now let's talk about today's presentation, because otherwise we're going to get sidetracked. All right, values. I want to kind of share a little bit. Hi, Luma Graphics, welcome. Good. Now you say you can hear me fine. Fantastic. Okay, so I want to talk about technique, but I also want to talk about vision. I also teach something called a value-based workflow, which is all kind of part of this thing of contrast masking in Photoshop. And let's actually tackle it this way. I want to just get us used to working with values in a very different way. In other words, I want us going back to working with values first before we work with colors. Now, I want to go back to what Ansel Adams have taught us. Now, for those of you who don't know what Ansel Adams is, which surprises me from time to time, you should, younger generation have no idea who Ansel Adams is, the great black and white photographer who actually mastered the concept of making expressive imagery by the use of values, rich tones, bright tones, to create his own personal vision. Composition was critically important, but the tones were equally as important. All right. I want to share a few more photos here where I'm utilizing values to be more expressive in what I do. And I'm also going to show you how these values are applied to color. So composition is only half the battle. The other part of the battle is what we do with those values. Okay, let's go play. Let's grab something. Let's do this. Let's start with this one here. In fact, Command C, Command V, I'm going to duplicate it. And we're going to open this one up inside of ACR. All right. Now, let's think about our medium, the digital camera. I think understanding our medium is so critical as to how well we express ourselves as artists. Your digital camera is going to produce for you a very flat image. And it surprises me sometimes how many people get so used to the flat image that they don't always realize how much more can be done with it. One of the biggest problems we have as photographers, especially using the digital camera, is that color is the product that it produces from the get-go. Therefore, color becomes a crutch. And let me share with you what I mean. Now, if we take a look at this image, this is a shot that I did off of a wall somewhere in San Diego. It was actually during Comic-Con. This was painted onto a brick wall. I thought it was kind of a fun little image. I figured I'll use this as a great example just for this particular tutorial. Now, what I would like to do is enhance this, but the problem is that the color gets in the way. Now, most of us, what we do is we come in here and we start playing with things like contrast to kind of enhance it, to get it to really jump out. So what I'm going to suggest to everybody in starting off this presentation is that color at first is going to be your enemy. Get it out of the way. Okay? It's a crutch. Get it out of the way completely. So in ACR, besides the point that we start off with going to the lens correction and telling it to remove chromatic aberration and enable your profile for your lens, that's the first thing you should do with all of your imagery. Now we're going to go back to the basics tab in ACR. Now, what I'm doing here is exactly what you're going to do in Lightroom. Lightroom is nothing more than ACR and Bridge put together in one system with a database engine. So what you do here will be exactly the same in Lightroom. All right, now, the problem is color is in the way. Let's get it out of the way completely. I'm gonna go to the saturation tab at the very bottom of this list on the right-hand side, and I'm gonna pull the slider all the way to the left so that we're going to eliminate the color. Now we're gonna look at this and start to think about, okay, what do we have here? Is this expressive tonally? And that's important. Is it expressive tonally? What that means is, does this image that we're looking at here have depth, right? Does it have that three-dimensionality, the foreground, the middle ground, the background? They become distinctive so that it leads your eye into a world of very interesting possibilities. All right, so looking at this image, the answer to that would be no. It lacks depth. Okay, now let's achieve depth by understanding what these sliders are doing. Now, Adobe originally designed ACR so that you're working from the top down. Now, what I suggest to you is that you understand ACR so that you're looking at this from a value-based point of view. Okay, so what I mean is, let me grab this. What I mean is that we're going to look at the values. We're going to start with the darker tones, and we're going to work our way all the way up to the higher tones and make sure that we're getting that expressive feel and look from this image that we as an artist are going to decide to give it. Now, Camera Raw is only a start. Most of this is going to be done in Photoshop. But Camera Raw is a good place to start, just so that I can open up your minds to the possibilities of working with your imagery, utilizing ACR in a value-based mode rather than in color. So let's start with the darker values. Let me get in close. I'll zoom in a little bit more. And what we're looking at is this black paint around the figure. Now, I want to make sure that there's detail everywhere. So my first thought is this. Let's target those darker values. But before we do so, let's understand these sliders. Exposure is dealing with shadows, midtones, and highlights equally. No matter what direction you go in, equal amounts of those three areas are going to be adjusted. Contrast is the devil. Stay away from it. Make it a habit not to play with contrast. What contrast does is it ignores your midtone and targets your shadows and highlights. Adobe has given us the ability to target those shadows, shadow and highlights manually in much better ways, which I'm about to show you. I'm not going to show you anything that you probably would consider new. I'm just going to show you a different way of thinking. I'm going to try to get you into a different mindset. So let's express where we're going this way. You were going to create an image onto a canvas. What do you start off with? You start off with a pencil sketch, right? With a line sketch. What color is that line? It's going to be more than likely black. Where do you go from there? Okay, then you're going to lay down your values-based system where you have your shadows, midtones, and the highlights. You're going to start to sketch out the detail. If it's a person or a portrait, a face or hands or a landscape, you start to use a value-based system to create those shadows, midtones, and the highlights. That's what you do when you're working traditionally in art. After all that is done, you lay on the color. The problem with our craft and photography is it's backwards. We're working with color first, trying to get the value, when we should be working with the value first to get the color. And then all that's going to feed into this whole contrast masking system. All right, so keep in mind, this is just to get you guys into a different headset. Now, I zoomed in close here, looking at the darker values. I'm coming right down here at the bottom. I'm going to just bring up those shadow values just a little bit, and you're gonna see why in just a moment. My shadows is represented, if you look at the histogram up here, I'm going to kind of mouse over it. You can see like a little gray highlight will mouse over a section of values. The left is your extreme blacks, your brighter blacks, your midtones going to the middle, whites, and then your extreme whites. All right. Now, when I'm creating, I don't care what the histogram says, because you care about how your image looks, how expressive your image is going to be. So we're not interested in being technicians as we are being artists. So I'm going to come over here to the shadows. So I'm going to start with the shadows. I'm thinking, okay, shadows have detail. They're pretty detailed. I want to bring out a little bit more detail. I will accomplish that by going to the shadow slider and bringing up the values. See that? Bring up the values in the lower tones just a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay, why did I do this? The goal here is to control the detail in the shadows, bring the detail out of the shadows so I can just push them right back down to get a good starting image. The best tool to use that I found in ACR and or Lightroom is dehaze. Because what is dehaze? It's simply taking the haze out of the atmosphere. How is it accomplishing that? If you look in an image, in say a landscape, and you look further back in the background, you notice things are getting hazy. So how is dehaze working? Your higher values in your landscape never change. What is haze doing to your image? Haze is not affecting your higher values. It's affecting your lower values. Higher haze won't touch the highlights, but haze will take those lower shadow ranges and pull them up brighter, thus flattening your image out, thus making it hazy, right? All right, so if I come, bring shadows up a little bit for the purpose of bringing detail into these areas, now let's bring back the richness in the shadows. That's what the dehaze does. So if I go to the dehaze slider and bring it to the left, it hazes it up. If I pull it to the right, we get dehaze, which really gives us a nice, rich lower tone. And already we're starting to see some sharpness enhancement in here, because we're not sharpening it, we're messing with the values. Okay. When I work with my photographic images, I don't ever use sharpness. I don't need to. If you understand values and contrast, you can control all of that. So once the dehaze is down, nice and black, now I can, let's go ahead, I'm gonna zoom back a little bit on this. We can see the whole thing. Now I'm gonna think about other things, like maybe the highlights. So maybe, let's actually go to the highlights. I'm gonna bring them down just a little bit. I'm gaining more detail in this brick. Now, what did I do here? I'm playing with the shadows. I'm playing with the highlights. Highlights only target the higher values, all right? If I bring those values down, I'm starting to get control in the shading, highlights, and midtones. Okay, now what we've done, in addition to controlling the shadows, controlling the highlights, is we made it flat in two areas. We made it flat in the highlights, details, and we flattened it out with less contrast in the midtone areas. So if I pull this up, get in closer, and I pull it up and zoom in a little bit, and the slider, one of our newer tools in ACR for increasing contrast in your highlights, is called texture. So if I go to the texture, pull it to the left, you see it starts to flatten out a little bit. If I pull it to the right, it looks like it's sharpening it. But what it's doing is adding more contrast in just the brighter areas. Now, to add more contrast in the mid-tone areas, that's going to be your clarity. All right, pulling it to the left gives it a feeling that's going to be very soft. If we pull it to the right, look at that. Really starts to pop there. I'm thinking I can give myself a little more dehaze. There we go. Kind of give it some depth there. Go to my highlights, maybe pull that up a little bit. There we go. Now, we talked about why it's important to go back to black and white. Now you're about to see that. We've desaturated it here in hue and saturation, right? Now let's keep that in mind. And I'm gonna get a little drink of water here. All right, hydrated. So we pulled this out to pull the color out. Now, I mean, think about this. We haven't even touched we brought the shadows up a little bit. I can even go to the blacks, which are the extreme blacks, and I can even pull those down if I felt I need to have a little more richness in here. I can afford that, and that starts to make it more expressive. Now watch what happens in the saturation. Keep in mind that your saturation slider normally is at 0, dead center. Watch what happens as I pull this on over. Look at where the slider is, and look at what's happening. We got a very interesting saturated image with a lot more depth to it. And the slider is nowhere near its natural 0 point. There's a reason for that. The reason is we've eliminated, now actually before I say that, let me bring this over to 0, back to its normal state and see what it looks like. Look at that. That's 0 right there. It's garish, we've blown it out. But we pull it back where it's nowhere close to where it used to be. We're getting a much more saturated image, an image with a lot more depth to it. So let's actually click done on this one. Let's go over here to bridge. Let's bring them up. Let's put them side by side. I'm going to maximize this one here. So this is before, and this is, well, I'm going backwards, wrong way. That's before, and this is after. So that's before, very flat, very chalky, and this is after with a lot more depth. So the whole idea here is to kind of get you thinking in another direction. Now you have other tools also inside of ACR. Now say for example, you wanted maybe a little more yellow closer to this. Well, we can still go back into ACR and play with that temperature slider and just pull it out of the blue spectrum of light toward the yellow to add that. There we go, if that's what you choose. Okay, let's click done here. And let's explore one more, just one more like this. Let's go to this one here. Let's go to a photograph that's going to be a little more practical. And let's do it before and after. So right click, actually I'm going to hit Command or Control R for open and raw. And let's take a look at this. Something I shot, in fact, let me cancel this, because there's some adjustments that were made on here that I'm going to want to get rid of. Right click, develop settings, clear those settings. Good. Now they both are exactly the same. Let's open that up with a Command or Control R for raw. And let's enhance this. Let's think about this value-based workflow that's going to aid us in terms of this contrast masking approach. All right, colors in the way, right? So I'm gonna go over here to lens correction, make sure that's always turned on. It's not seeing my Canon profile. So what I'm gonna do is just target the Canon. There we go, and it sees the profile fine. Now let's go back to our basic settings. And let's go ahead and get the color out, and let's evaluate this in terms of a black and white image. Immediately what I'm seeing is our shadow details, which is on the shaded side of the rock, is blocked up completely. Now, the water detail, I have detail there, but could I get more? The sky could be a little richer. Let's play with this. Let's enhance this in a black and white situation. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my shadows. I'm going to look at this area. I'm thinking take the shadow detail and bring out the detail. There it is. It's just targeting the shadows. Okay. Notice I'm never touching that contrast. That's a thought, just to keep, it's a reminder. The contrast is the devil. So I'm going to pull out that detail there. Okay. And the next thing I'm going to do is I think I'm going to bring down the highlights. So go to my highlights. Let's see how much more I can bring out of those highlights. Okay. Pull it down. That's a little better. The highlights make this look a little richer in here. So I might just bring the shadows up just slightly more, just a teeny bit. There we go. Now we're going to go target the extreme blacks and bring it down to giving this depth. So we're going to go to dehaze. I'm going to pull the dehaze over to the left. And there we've got some nice rich details in here. And look what's also happening in the water. Look what's also happening in the sky. We're getting a lot more contrast out of here. This affords me the ability to probably bring up the exposure just slightly. Right there, okay? Now, let's deal with the contrast adjustments in the highlights by going to texture slider. Pull it to the right. Look at that, pops. Let's go to our midtones, clarity. Pull it to the right a little bit. Makes it a little richer, but that's okay. Okay. I'm thinking shadows may need to come up just a teeny bit, just intuition here. So I'm going to go to the shadows. It looks like it's almost to the right, but we don't care. We don't care what the histogram says. We're looking at this visually. So come over to the shadows. Let's pull this up. There we go. That pulls out a little more luminance out of this shaded area. Now let's go take a look at this color-wise. Let's bring it down, see the whole thing. Go to my saturation slider, nudge it up, nudge it up, nudge it up. Wow, look at that. Look at that. Look at where we are. All right, why is this working? Why are we getting greater depth this way than just working with color without actually desaturation the image? Because Photoshop works in LAB mode, like your tonal channels in the L channels, your lightness, A and B channel is your colors. So when we told Photoshop to take the saturation out, it went into LAB mode and only targeted the values and left all the color alone, didn't touch any color. That's why your slider and your saturation only comes up so far. So what does that mean to you as a technician? That means that because your saturation is not up there to zero where it is naturally, it essentially means that you have a lot more data in your photographic file. In your digital image, you have more pixel information still in there that's going to allow that file to print more expressively. Okay, does that make sense? All right, now let's go into another approach, which is what today's presentation is going to be based on. And let's go grab this image here. And let's go open that up. Okay. I'm going to go into the lens effects, remove chromatic aberration, and enable profile correction is already on. But that's all I'm going to do. We're going to open it raw and native inside of Photoshop. Let's open that up. Okay, there's my image. Hit the F key on the keyboard. That changes my viewing mode to full screen. All right, let's go ahead and duplicate this layer. All right, now we just finished talking about changing our mindset to looking at our imagery in terms of values. Okay. And this is going to be a similar situation. And what I'm going to teach you is, okay, so Toaster Crash from Twitch has a question. The question is, does this technique work for any visual media? Let's say a short video, for example. Okay, so that's a very good question. Yes, depending on the software that you're using. I believe After Effects and Premiere Pro has ways of targeting your shadows and your highlights to help you to adjust. And I think I'm not sure. I think it's an HDR filter in some of those, or it's not really called an HDR filter, but it's a HDR-like filter in some of those video editing programs that allow you to do it. What we're working with is the still image, and there's a lot more flexibility and a lot more tools for dealing with the still image than in video necessarily. Okay, but I do the same approach, and also Ivan says on Twitch has asked, would I do the same approach with photos of people, animals, etc.? Absolutely, you would. Because think of a bride in a bright white wedding dress, right? You're going to see the obvious, advantages in just a moment. But good questions, really good questions. All right, so now I shot this when I was up in the Bay Area, actually north of the Bay Area. This is up in wine country. Actually, this is up in Calistoga. So on my way home from Calistoga, I saw this little mailbox, and I love the way this shadow was kind of moving off to the corner there. So I had to stop and shoot it. So Ruscular 3D from Twitch also mentioned, does resolution matters? Absolutely. Resolution always matter. All right. The greater pixel information you have, the more flexibility you're going to have. Okay. So, and I'm looking at questions on Zoom and no questions there. Cool. All right. I guess everybody's following along with me. Any questions, stop and ask. I'll stop and ask. Stop and answer them as best as I can. All right. Now, if we take a look at this, I'm going to zoom in close here. There is detail in the whites. There's lots of detail in there. I want to be able to control that. I want to be able to control my shadows, my highlights, and midtones. Okay, let's zoom this down. Let's start with this. Where are we going to start? We're going to start with channels. Okay, so in fact, to make this a little bit more easier for you guys to follow along, I'm going to pull the channels out of here so that we're looking at the layers and the channels at one time. All right. So if you look at now this one is not going to be the best example, but it's fairly decent example. Let's take a look at the channels. We got the red, the green, and the blue, and they're all in value based, right? They're all using black and white values. Red, green, and our blue. What I want to do is I want to create a value-based image based on the full color image. Currently, you're seeing the red by itself, the green by itself, and the blue by itself. But I want to see everything in one value. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Photoshop to put all the highlights into a selection. And the shortcut to do that is Command or Control on your keyboard, take your cursor and put it over the RGB image thumbnail and click on it. All right. So from Anissa Brown to, oh, that's to Daniel Kramer. Okay, I thought it was to me. All right, no problem. So now what I did was I held down the control key and clicked in release right on the RGB thumbnail. And what produced was a system of selections. All the selection means is whatever is selected is what you can edit. All a selection means is anything that's white is what's going to be selected. And that's what it did. Now I'm going to take this selection and turn it into its own channel. I'm going to click this icon second from the left on the bottom of your channels. And that icon there is called Save Selection as a Channel. If I click it, look, there's my new alpha channel. Let's turn off, if I click, let's turn off the selections, Command or Control D. That's my new alpha channel. Let's compare between the other three. Red, green, and blue, and alpha. It's different. Where do we see the differences? Especially when you look into the cracks of the fence here, it's different from the other images. Because what we've done is we've taken a full color image and we've given it a full tonal range result. Okay, now this is where it gets fun. Okay, so a lot of us should be familiar with utilizing layer masks, where the white areas within the mask will allow you to make an effect to your image. That's essentially what we're going to do. We're going to create a mask based on these channels. Thus, we're going to learn to control the contrast, thus contrast masking. All right. Okay,
Stephen,
so
we have a question from Joanne
yes,
who's
just
asking, was
saw it.
that command click or control click?
Okay, great question. So control or command. So control in Photoshop, and for PC people, command for Macintosh people. Essentially, it's the same shortcut. And let's see any other questions there. Okay, so what is your actual name? Oh, that's Anissa talking to somebody else. Sorry. All right, here we go. We're going to keep going here. Okay. Let's further understand this process. I just created an alpha channel. Essentially, it's a mask. The key to mastering Photoshop is mastering selections. Selections, masks, and channels are all exactly the same thing. So if that's true, then I should be able to make a selection from this new alpha channel that I created. Yes, I can. And I just showed that to you. Command or Control, click on it. All right? And it just made a selection. Now, if I make a brand new channel from this, like I hit that little icon from the bottom left-hand side, it's going to be exactly the same as the other one. If I click on each one, they're both exactly the same. Just making a point here. So let's delete this one. So Command or Control, click on this one, gives me my marching ants. Now, here's where it gets fun. I'm going to use an intersecting technique. I want to be able to control the highlights here, but I want to select less highlight. The brighter portions of this image is basically going to be a result of selecting those areas in addition to these bright areas in percentages to make an effect eventually. But I want less of these areas around here. I want more of the highlighted box. So with the selection running, as we see here with it live, all I'm going to do is hold down all three modifiers, Command and Control, Alt, Option, and Shift held down together. With all three modifiers held down together, I'm going to click on the Alpha 1 icon. on the channel. Click it and look, the selection changed. It got smaller. Well, let's make another alpha channel from those selections. And let's click this little icon, second from the left here. And let's click on that one. See? Interesting, huh? Well, okay, so we selected less of the white. What if I want to even select less than that? All right? I want to really hone in on the mailboxes. I can do it again. Command click on that channel, hold Command, Option, and Shift together, click on that alpha channel, it intersects it with itself. Now make a new alpha channel, and this is what we have. Okay, so, well, think about it. What could we do with these at this point? All right, let's take a look at this. Alpha 1, we got a basic tonal value based on the full color range of the image. The goal of us as an artist is to target more of the brights in this image. This is a lot of the midtones being selected here. So we go to Alpha 2. That's much better. Richer, deeper areas. That means these areas that are darker are going to be selected. These areas that are almost black will not be selected at all. But still, it may be a little bit too much. So I will go over to Alpha 3, and now you can see that these are almost black in there. Now I can go even further if I want to. So let's do it. Let's just do one more just for the fun of it. I'm going to duplicate this alpha channel. That's right. I can use that as Rowan Morgan says. I could use this as a channel to change color. Absolutely. Now, if I go to Alpha 3 with the exact same thing as Alpha 1, I can use a brush now. And we'll come back to this again later. But if I hit my brush, B key on the keyboard, and I'm adjusting the size of my brush, I'm using a very soft edge brush here. And if I use my blend mode, I want to give a blend mode to my brush. So if I target that blend mode and tell it to use overlay, overlay is targeting two areas: your whites, your high tones, and your low tones, your whites and your blacks. If I tell Photoshop to paint with white, hitting the D key, make sure black and white is chosen, it will only affect the whites. If I hit the X key and tell it to affect only the blacks, make sure then it's only going to affect the blacks. So if I start to paint, oops, I'm in the wrong tool here. Hit the B key for the brush, of course. There we go. There's my brush. If I paint with black, it'll target the black and leave all the whites alone. So things get darker. And we're going to show you some practical applications of that in just one moment. So as I brush around here, it's a way for me to be sloppy and avoid the whites and just target those mailboxes. Making sense? Okay, so let's get out of here and let's go apply this practically. All right, maybe I want to bring down the background a little bit, overall image. So maybe I'll select the alpha channel, alpha 1 for this. So go back to my layers, and we're going to use our adjustment layers. So go to my black and white half circle. It looks like a yin-yang symbol. And if I target my curves, okay, see my curves adjustment and properties, I can make an adjustment. So currently the mask is black. So if I can make it darker or make them brighter. But the goal here is to target the brighter areas over the darker areas. So maybe what I will do is place in here that alpha channel, the alpha 1, right? So there's alpha 1 there. I'm going to take alpha 1 and put it inside the mask or on the adjustment layer for curves. I'm going to accomplish that through a command called apply image. Basically means apply an image from somewhere else into the area that you have selected, right? So if I target the mask, image, apply image, I'm in this current file. I'm using the merged layer, but what do I want to be placed into this layer? Currently, it merged the RGB image into one value, placed it into that channel layer. I don't want that. I want the one I created called alpha 3, alpha 1 right there, the first one. So, okay, Mandala has a question. He says, Photoshop won't let you just drag the mask of the channels list into the mask portion of the layer. I'm not quite sure what you mean. There's a better way of doing it, Jason, and I haven't shown you yet. That's coming up next, so hold tight. All right, so if I target OK, you can see it's placed that image into this channel. Now, if I go to my layers, not layers, but my adjustment layer, I should say, of curves, I can make those adjustments, and you can see it's only affecting those brighter areas and not the shadows at all, right? We start, this is a beginning understanding of contrast masking. Using a contrast in your channels as a means to mask out or to get detail or to take away detail in your image. Okay, so I will bring it down just a little bit, just to give the fence a little bit more of a depth, a little more saturation. Now I want to go and get these mailbox. I want to target those solely. I've got two other channels here. I've got an alpha 2 and I have an alpha 3. I'm thinking let's go to the alpha 3 directly, okay? All right, so now we will make another adjustment layer, just another curve. I never get greedy trying to do this all on one curve, okay? You're slowly building up, just as a painter is applying pigments to a canvas. They're slowly building up the saturation, the detail, and the form to create their vision. Just a step-by-step process. You're not trying to do it all in one big swoop change. So if I come back and also add in here, somebody had mentioned here on Zoom that we hear about Jack DeGan. Yes, Jack DeGan was a personal friend of mine, and he will be well missed. His son contacted me on my cell and let me know about it. They're supposed to be organizing some type of a gathering or a memorial for him after this whole COVID thing is all done. But yes, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That Jack was inspired a lot of people. Is a good man. He will be well missed. Okay, here's my curves. Now I want to do something different. I'm going to undo that. Okay, Command Z. All right, I took away the curves. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to get the selection. Why? Because channels, masks, and selections are exactly the same thing. So Command click on alpha 3. There's my selection. This is going to answer Jason Mandala's question. I hit Command click on alpha 3 to get my selection. All I have to do now is simply come over to the adjustment layer and apply my curves, and that's going to create the curves based on my selection, which is the same thing as alpha 3. So if I hold the Alt or Option key on the keyboard and click and release on the icon for the mask on the curves layer, it's going to give you, it's going to allow you to view that adjustment right there on this screen. Okay. All right, so let's go back to standard layer. Now we can make some adjustments here. make it, see how I'm isolating those values. So I'm messing with more the mid-tone of the image. I can also take the highlights and just bring them straight down to flatten it if I want to, okay? Or add a little more contrast just in those areas that are selected. So Jason's asking a question, Jack who? Well, you didn't know Jack DeGan. I'll tell you later. There we go. See that? Look at the detail that we're able to achieve at this point. Okay. All right. So this was kind of a starter image I wanted to kind of start you with. Now, let's kind of go backwards here. What we want to do next is actually start thinking about the shadow details as well. So if we could actually target the highlights, couldn't we also target the shadows? So let's think about that. So we're going to take a look at our mask right over here. Actually, let's go back over to here and take a look at all of this. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to think about which one of these channels is probably going to help us to actually isolate the shadow details in here. Okay. Now we're going to, after this, we're going to go to an image that's a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit more practical, where you can see how to apply all types of adjustments to various areas of your image. So that's applying that contrast masking technique. All right, so if we take a look at the shadow details here, let's get my Wacom pen. I want to target just most of the shadow area. So I can do it in a couple of ways here. Let's go ahead and command click on the alpha channel. Let's give it another mask, which is going to be a curves mask. And I've got too many things highlighted over there. I want to go right up to RGB. There we go. Now, I'm going to Alt or Option click right on the mask. And I'm going to need to tell Photoshop to target the shadows. And I think you guys know where I'm going at this point. We can simply hit the invert command. Image menu, adjustment, invert, or Command or Control I. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit Command or Control I. You see what we're doing? Now the mask is going to be favoring the shadow details because they are now bright white. And it's going to mask out the effects onto the highlight details. So if I click on the adjustment layer and play around with the curves, see? It's just going to play around with these details here on the areas outside. Now, I could have made it more extreme, but to save time, I think you guys get the point. All right, so I don't see questions. If any questions, probably a good time to go ahead and pop them in there. Let's go get a different image. Let's go close this one out. Let's go play with something else. Okay. All right, so let's actually, this will be a good one actually. Or we can do something with waterfall. Let's see. We have this one here. In fact, we have that there. Here's a CR2. Let's play with this one here. I think this will be a good example. This is one that I shot in Death Valley. And it's a nice little system of details. That's full tonal range image, but extreme highlights and shadow situation. So it's Death Valley is pretty warm, but this is in Rhyolite. It's an old ghost town. It's a very cool place. A great place to kind of play around with abstract ideas as well. So if you guys ever get an opportunity to, definitely come in and come with me in my Death Valley classes. I think you have a lot of fun. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and open this up. So I'm gonna hit Command R into RAW real quick. It's gonna happen, it's a RAW file anyway. I just wanna go over here to the effects, there we go. Get the lens profile selected for my Canon camera, and also correction of chromatic aberration. Let's go ahead and open the image. And let's play with this. There we go. I'm going to duplicate the layer. Command J. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and right click on this one, and I'm going to make it a smart object. For this particular tutorial, it doesn't matter. I don't really need to make it a smart object. But let's go play with the idea of this contrast masking. So we've got one area for shadows. We have one area for the highlights. We have to decide how expressive how this image is going to express itself. So I'm gonna go to these three channels: red, green, and blue. All right. One of these may do better. Red, the shadows are coming up a little bit. The green, they're a little bit deeper. Blue, let's see, green and blue, probably blue's even a little more richer in here. Okay, and I can even use one of these channels to create an alpha channel, but I want to see what it would give me with the overall image. So targeting the RGB channel, command click on it, and then I'm going to go ahead and make a fresh channel from that. And I'm going to take a look at it and compare the other. Alpha 1 to blue. Okay. Yeah, Alpha 1 has deeper shadows. I like that. Green, still the shadows are too light. That's Alpha 1 again. And then red. Yeah, Alpha 1 is the best. So Alpha 1, doing it this way gives you a little more options in terms of looking at the potential masking situations. Okay, so this will be an ideal mask for shadows and highlights separately. Let's go ahead and target these highlights. All right, so in the alpha channel, command click right on the alpha channel icon. That gives me the highlights only. Right, that's giving me the highlights from this image. Now come down to create a mask from that selection. Second icon from the left. What I want to do is this. I overstepped myself. I'm gonna undo that. Command Z. All right, now, once I created that selection from the alpha 1, we want to create an intersection with itself. So command, option, command or control, option or alt, shift, all three held down together. While all three of those are holding down together, click and release on alpha 1. It's changed the selection. Now we make a new alpha channel. Take a look at it. Okay, that's what we've done. It's going nice and rich. Let's do it again and see what we get. So I'm gonna scroll this down a little bit more so we can see all of these in here at one time. Command and click on the alpha 2, and then again intersect it again with all three modifiers down there, and click and release on the alpha 2 channel, then creating a new alpha channel. There we have it. Okay, so this is getting a little bit too rich. So what it's doing is it's favoring, this particular channel is favoring more of the highlights on this crossbar. So let's keep that in mind. We can use this one. I think this one's going to be a better option for what we want to do overall. Now, here's what I'm thinking. Let's take these darker, richer details down a little bit more. Let's take the brighter areas up, shadows down a little bit more, brighter areas coming up a little bit more. We're going to utilize our apply image command to itself. Okay, so I don't screw up the original alpha channel. I'm going to duplicate it, drag it right down here to this icon to the left of the garbage can, and now I have two of those. There's the other one there. This one, I'm going to go to image menu, apply image. Okay, by default it goes back to multiply. If I just go to normal blend mode, it goes back to what we had originally, right? But what I want to do is I want to give this a blend mode that's going to affect your shadows and highlights in such a way that your highlights are going to become brighter and your shadows are going to go deeper. The one set of blend modes that we have is going to be under the overlay section. See, if I start to scroll mouse over this, darken, richens, and deepens your shadow midtone details. Lighten, brightens your highlight, midtone highlight details. Overlay makes your shadows richer and your highlights brighter. And I'm going to take a look and see. Now this is not bad. Okay. I'm thinking overlay for starters and click OK. Next, apply it one more time, image, apply image, but this time, instead of overlay, go to something like screen. That's going to make your highlights brighter. See that? We're starting to create an effective mask. Why is this important? Because so many times we apply a mask in Photoshop and we go in with the paintbrush, we try to paint it in, but all of the detail is already there in the channel. So just utilize that detail to get us most of the way there before we then start to apply your brush command to your channels. So looking good. Let's go back and do it again. Image, apply image. That's even better. Okay. All right. So I will do it one more time just to really brighten it up. Apply image. There we go. And let's see. What if we go to a different blend mode like color dodge? Oh, there we go. Dodge really, or linear dodge. Oh, linear dodge really pops it out. I'm going to go with color dodge because if you go to linear dodge, the shadows start to come up just a little bit. You can see the difference there just a little bit as I mouse over. So if I, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here so you can see the difference. Let's get out of the darken blend mode. So screen, color dodge, linear dodge. See? So color dodge shadows get richer. Linear dodge shadows come up a little bit. So I'm going to stay at color dodge. Okay, that works. We'll use this. Okay, so we're going to utilize this to control our shadows and our highlights. All right, let's go play. Here's my new alpha channel right down here. Command click on it. Let's go back to my layers. Click on the top layer, which puts me right back into the RGB composite mode here. Then I'm going to go to my adjustment layers. I will go to my curves once again. And remember that selection is still there. So once curves are selected, look, it transferred right here in my channels or my mask for my curves. It transferred it there. Okay. Now let's get out of this. Let's apply a command. So right down here for the properties, that's for the curves. Curves are targeted. So I can come in here and play around with controlling that detail in there. See that? It's just targeting just the highlights. Now, another technique you can use also is you can add a slight Gaussian blur to this particular adjustment. So with the mask targeted, filter, let's get in a little closer and see if we can see the effect here. Oops. Let's go maximize that once again. There we go. Filter blur, Gaussian blur. And you can kind of see how the edges are starting to blend in a little better. Now this image is actually does have a double shadow there. That's a little, the camera movement there. So just to make you aware of that. So if I adjust it more, you can see it's blending in the shadows and highlight a little bit more effectively. Okay, so what if I want to add maybe a little more contrast to the shadow areas? Not necessarily make it deeper, but just add a little more contrast. So I could duplicate this adjustment, right? I'm gonna go into the adjustment, take the adjustment away. Now I'm gonna want to inverse this mask. I'm gonna option click on the mask, Command I on the mask, so we're targeting the opposite. And then what I'll do is go back to the adjustment, and just so that it gives you, see, now we can target the shadows everywhere. Now the beauty of this is that it's everywhere in the image. Wherever you have shadows, you've got total control. You don't have to come back in here and use a brush and try to get it right, or use selections to try to get it right. It's all done right here in your channels, right? So let's see, we wanted to make more contrast, so I can bring the shadow areas down and bring the highlights up, giving you an S curve, and look at the detail that you just pulled out just in the shadow areas alone, right? So if I do before and after, before and after, clicking on eyeball, is that making sense, guys? It's pretty fun stuff. So now here, remember that one that I did that was really dark? It was this one here. Okay, this would be ideal just for targeting just this long pillar here, because this one is much brighter than everything else. So could I come in here and make a selection? I could, but then what am I missing? I'm missing all of this little fine little ripply detail, because this pillar is not linear. There's ripply detail of concrete and pits and nudges all the way across here. And this technique I'm showing you guys targets all that detail. It's already in the channel. Why try to go in there and mask it out by hand? Right? Is that making sense? So contrast masking techniques. So let's kind of bring it down. Let's go play with this one. So there's the alpha channel that I want to target. I think what I'm going to need to do is knock these other values down first to make this the most successful. So let's see. Charles Allen says to all panelists, is it my imagination? It appears that the technique is changing the hue of parts of the selected when curves adjusted. So I'm not sure what you mean by that. So here, let's go to here. And if I make adjustments, it's not targeting the hue. Well, honestly, I'm not really, let me put it this way. It could be, honestly, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm targeting my adjustment curve to the entire image, color and tonal values. It's an RGB image, right? So when we apply curves to an RGB image, it's affecting the red, green, and blue channel equally, right? When it's doing that, it is going to cause some some color shift. That's just the way it's going to be. If you apply curves to any image, whether it's a portrait, a landscape, abstraction, whatever you're shooting, you apply curves to it, you're going to apply some type of color, change. You want to find out how not to apply the color change? Got an idea for you. All right, let's take a look. Let's start with this channel. Here is targeting only the shadows everywhere, right? And let's bring up the highlight areas a little bit more. Bring the shadow areas down a little bit more there, right about like that. Okay, now, if I don't want this to target any color, and I only want to target just the value system, then change your blend mode from normal to luminosity, and that will not touch your colors at all. Luminosity means change the luminance, but not the color. So if we go to this curves over here, targeting your highlights, let's get in closer, okay? Hit the F key on the keyboard, and let's zoom in a little closer and see if it's any visually much of a change. So before and after, before and after. So Charles Ellen says, nice solution. You just got to understand how these things and why these things work. So here, curves for the highlights, fine. Go out of normal, go to luminosity, there. Touch the values and not the colors, right? Before, after, before, after. That way, you will not get any type of hue shift, okay? All right, so let's take a look at it before, so far, before and after. Before, see how we're able to just mask out the whites? We still have one more to do. We're just about to do this little vertical bar, right? So let's go to that channel. I think we're getting ready to play with this one here, and we're going to make an adjustment. So I want this vertical bar to stand out. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to use our brush to assist us. So watch what we'll do. Hit the B key for the brush. Okay. Now, again, I'm targeting the alpha 3 channel. I want to make sure my blend mode for that brush is going to be overlay, which means it's only going to target the blacks and the whites, or the highlights and the lower values and the highlights. It's not going to touch any of the midtones at all. No midtones. Now I'm going to tell it what colors to target. I'm going to target the whites. So make sure white is in the foreground here. Okay, I'm going to bring this on over next to each other. And I'm going to zoom in closer and use a soft brush. Okay, it's a little bit smaller brush. All I care about are the edges right now. So I am going to paint. See, it's not touching the darker areas, only those whiter areas. I just want to get that edge out. And I'm going to just brighten up this edge right along here, like so. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. And just brighten up just a little bit. Just a little bit. That's all I need. I want that extra detail in there. Now, hit the X key to go to black. Painting with black will only look at the darker values and pull it down. And it will not touch the highlights. There. See? Just get all this down. Now, from this point, to save time, is L key for your lasso tool, and just lasso all this. And do what? Fill with the foreground color, Alt or Option, backspace, or delete. Fills with your foreground color. Come down here to the bottom, do the same thing. Alt or Option, backspace or delete is filled with the background color there. Okay. There's my mask. Command D. Now, let's get out of here and utilize this mask just for that little vertical bar. So Command click right on the alpha channel. There's my selection. Come back up to the top. Give it a curves adjustment. Take that curves adjustment and make it into luminosity blend mode so that we don't mess with the color. Now, Command plus, get in close, and let's play with it. Let's come right down here and see what we can do. Let's see, bring it, there we go. So we're just targeting that one little area. I don't want this all to go that dark. I definitely want some highlights. So I don't want to make it that rich, but at least it gives me some richness if I so choose. Now, learning what we've learned, we can go ahead, watch, we can go ahead and make a selection from this, right? And then Command or Control Option O, all three modifiers held down, click on it, and it reduces selection even more. Make another adjustment there to make it even smaller. All right, to reduce the selection closer to the highlight. So you have that option. All right. Okay, so so Anissa, are you there?
I am. What's up?
All right, so how long do we go to?
We are rounding right up at the 6:30 mark. We should be getting ready to take a break or get.
Oh, yes, that'll be perfect.
Yes.
That'll be perfect.
Okay.
So, how long is the break?
Let's
Is that
say
good?
it again.
Is
Say it
10
again,
minutes
Daniel.
good?
I didn't hear Daniel.
He said it's 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes? All right. So what I'll do is I'll get the 10-minute timer I like to use.
Right at 6:40.
Right, there's my 10-minute timer. And let's click on this. I'll start it in just a minute. There we go. We'll do the 10-minute timer. Then we all come back. And then what I'll do is I'll pause the recording on OBS.
And same here on.
Is there someone that have a suggestion that they'd like me to cover? Please post it in the chat box.
We'd appreciate it.
Yes. Okay. So Charles Allen says, Stephen, off of a Zoom, by the way. Stephen, I've started with Photoshop 2.5 and pride myself, but every time I get a little big in my britches, someone like you, oh God, someone like you comes along to remind me there's always a much faster gun in town. Well, gosh, thank you for the compliment. I just wish it was true. Oh, that's pretty funny. Oh man. So Anissa's laughing at Charles. You feel the same
We're all
way.
the same boat.
Oh man. Oh my gosh. I've been doing that. I've been since 2.5 as well. And gosh, I work with it every day. Jason Whitman says, laughing with you. It's pretty true. Hannah Messer says, I've been using it since 1. Oh my gosh. We're showing our age, Hannah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's been a long time, hasn't it? Adobe's really made some changes. I mean, it's gone into directions we never expected to go into. Hannah says she's been using it since 1.0. I'm the old one. I do not care. it's my spirit. You know what? Listen, Hannah is not old. Matter of fact, if people like give me a hard time, I said, I don't care. I'll just get Hannah on you. She'll take care of you fast. so Daniel says he's been using it since 2.5. Yeah, how many people? I'm curious. Type in the chat box, both Twitch and Zoom. What version did you start off with? I'm very curious. 2.0, 5.0. We got a 5.0 with Cheryl White. 1.0 with Carrie Johnson. Rowan says 5.5, 7. We got a 7 from Rochi. Rico says 3.0. Lois says 3.0. What about you guys on Twitch? What version of Photoshop did you start off with? Carl says 5. Jason says whatever the first one was. We don't know. We can't tell you. Hannah says I actually got a Xerox copy from Adobe. And that was basically when it was on floppy disks, right, Hannah? I mean, how many discs? Let's see. Dreddy from Twitch says, Dreddy3 from Twitch says he started with version 5. Yeah, that was all on floppy disks. And I remember it wasn't, I think 4.0 was like the one that had the most discs. I think version 5, did that start going on to CD? I think it was. It's been so long. Jennifer Cohan, of course, Jennifer, the Adobe girl herself. She says she started on 1. Gosh, that's way back when. Kathleen Pittman, 1 or 2. Old cow. Oh no, Anna. Let's see. Jake says started with 1.0. Gosh, wow. Look at this. On a Mac. Andrew Taylor says probably on a Mac. Did Photoshop start on a Mac or on the PC? It started on the Mac, right?
On Mac. But
Yeah. Okay, so you feel much more at ease being such a newbie with all you guys. Carl Shrub. Cool. All right. Memory fails. So Ivan on Twitter says memory fails him. If that's the case, that means you're probably on 1.0. I can remember 2.5 because it was just about when they were introducing layers. Okay, let's have some fun. All right, I've got a couple images here. Here's one. Let's go to this one here. I like to challenge myself photographing. Not that one. That was one I took in Yosemite area. I want to use that one. Okay, so I like to challenge myself for doing some abstractions every so often. I like to use lighting as a sense of as part of my compositional element. And therefore, these contrast masking techniques are ideal for stuff like this. Let's see what we can do with this one. Let's think about giving us more visual appeal, more depth, a little more bite to it using some of these techniques. Okay, let's go ahead, open it up in RAW real quick since it is a RAW file. And let's go ahead, just make sure the lens corrections all apply. It is. I'm going to go ahead and open it up directly in Photoshop. Now, if you guys keep in mind that you can, right down here on the bottom of the image, he has a little link. It says Adobe RGB, blah, yada, yada, yada. If we click on that link, you get another box option that comes up like this. And right in the very bottom, you can tell it to open it up as a smart object. I highly recommend people to start working in smart objects. There are situations you may not want to use smart objects, but it's a good idea to get into that habit. I'm going to do so now. Open up the object. And there you go. It's automatically a smart object. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our values. We got 3 sets of values here, red, green, and blue. Now, because the image doesn't have a lot of color in it to begin with, I don't expect a lot of change. And there's some change. The blue, the shadows are lighter. Now remember, what the previous image, the shadows were deeper in the blue channel, but this particular image is not. Green is deeper, red is deeper. Now let's make a composite grayscale. So command click on the RGB channel. Once I have the selections, I simply give it a new mask there and take a look at, now look at that one, that's better. All right, so red and then the alpha, richer, green and then the alpha 1. Alpha 1 is still better. Blue and then the alpha 1. Alpha 1 is still better. I think alpha 1 is going to work here. There may be situations where a composite of the alpha 1 is not going to work, but in this particular case, it works well. Now, let's go ahead and create a clipping path from of the highlights here. So command click on that alpha channel, hold all 3 keys down, command click on the alpha channel, make a new alpha channel here, second icon from the left, and there. Okay, there it is. It's deeper. Okay, so what we're doing is we're isolating these brighter areas a little bit more from the shadows. Just so that I can experiment a little bit, I want to see how much more I can isolate the highlights. So command click on the alpha 2 that I've just created, hold all 3 keys down, and then click and release on alpha 2 to make it a to kind of intersect the cells. In other words, we're basically telling it to reduce the amount of values, white values that you're selecting, right? And go to the more extreme white values. I don't know how it's going to look, but let's go ahead and target it. And there it is. Okay, so it really, what I'm seeing here is a possibility of just making these areas just a little bit brighter. I'm going to do that on this channel. I'm comparing it to this one, but this one here, the shadows come a little bit more. Here, the shadows stay down real low. So what I will do then is image, apply the image, and simply tell it to apply screen just to bring up those brighter values. Now, what the screen is going to do, the screen blend mode only targets the bright values. It isn't going to target the darker values. So I'm going to do it one more time. Image, apply image. See how the brighter values are coming up? That's all I want, okay? It's a beautiful, it's a nice, beautiful selection of the highlights in this particular piece. So this is going to help me really give myself some depth here. So let's go over here and give it a mask. So command click on the alpha 3, and then let's go ahead to the curves, and then I've just created a mask. I'm also going to duplicate the alpha 2 channel. And that's not what I meant to do. I wanted to duplicate the alpha 3 channel. There we go. And then inverse it, command I, so that now I can select the shadows separately. So this channel's for the shadows. This channel is going to be for the highlights. Let's go into the shadows here, and let's bring down these areas deeper. So the areas that were brighter, I want them down a lot deeper, okay? So image menu, apply image, apply a blend modes to itself. I think I'll do multiply there. I think multiply works great because these are so bright that I think this is going to just keep making it deeper. Now I can also go with another apply image. I can do that, or maybe overlay, which makes the whites whiter and the blacks blacker. And then there, okay. I can change these names. I can say, okay, double click on this one. That's for my shadows. All right, this one is going to be for my highlights. So I'm going to highlight that there. All right, so there we go. Now, we already have the highlights in this on layer. Let's go put the shadows in this on adjustment layer. Command click right on it. So command click, get the selection, go to my curves adjustment, and there it is. It's been applied directly to this. Okay, this is where it gets fun. let's go to the shadows. Let's go, here's my adjustment just for the, see, look at that. It's clean. It's absolutely clean. Just targeting this, the shadow detail. Now, remember, shadows, midtones, and highlights. If I get in closer, I want to add some more, I want this to be rich, but I want it to have detail. So in the curves, I'm going to say take those shadow details low, but bring up some of the brighter areas, and I'm going to determine just how far I want to go. So maybe I don't want to go so far down on the shadows, just bring it up just a little bit, but just enough to bring a little more. I'm just playing around with these various values throughout the shadow regions in here. So I'm adding points to the curve to play around with this one, hoping to get a nice, there we go. I might want to take this side a little richer. So let's see if I kind of take, there we go, take that down a little bit more. That works. Okay, now we go over to the highlights, and let's see what can be done here. Just to see what's selected, I'm going to kind of move this around. See that? Look at that. Just like those areas, select those areas beautifully. I want to add contrast to this. Bring down the lower values like that. Yeah, we can see that all these lower values, little highlights right on the edges of each of these little shapes. Now let's take those highlights up a little bit. Right about there. Maybe bring it down. Bring it down a little lower in here. There we go. So just kind of get your imagination going. See, that's the control that we have. You also can do this. Let's duplicate that highlight. Let's go, since the highlights here, okay, that's the highlights right here. Let's duplicate the highlights. You can also do this. Change the blend mode of that adjustment layer. So instead of normal, let's scroll down to see what happens as I mouse over each of these. Look at that. That linear burn works really nice in terms of bringing in detail. Lighten, screen, too bright, overlay, hard light, linear light. I'm thinking that linear burn works real nice there. So we can actually use layer blend modes in addition to the adjustments that we make to really control detail and feeling in our image. See that? So if you start to see this little edge problem there, that means you're gonna need to soften your mask a little bit. Okay. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Okay, and just soften it. And each one's going to have to be softened, by the way, but just kind of keep your eye on that. So is that helpful a little bit? I think that's an easy one to kind of do. Now, let's actually go to something that might be a little bit more difficult.
And while you're transitioning to a new image, a quick question that was asked is there any situation where you would not want to open an object or an image as a smart object?
I think, let me answer the question this way. Smart objects take more memory or more RAM. However, computers have gotten faster, processors are faster. I mean, on this system that I'm working on now, I have a 16-core processor. Okay, so the standard processor in the market today is 8-core. It used to be quad-core. This one's 16. So 8-core is although it's coming in abundance, is so fast that you don't need to worry about it so much. I find that smart objects give you a lot of flexibility to go back and make changes if you so need. The times where you may not use smart objects is where you're using creating concept art, right? Which is kind of what I'll be doing during the PhotoCon Hawaii, is building concept art pieces. where you don't need a full image in a layer. You only need pieces, those small pieces of image. So you select them and bring them over and add them into your creation. But overall, if you're working photographically or even with photo compositing and all of that, I think smart objects really help. Do you have to? No, but one day you may want to come back to that image and realize, I really want to, make adjustments in size in certain areas of my work. Smart objects help you to preserve that detail for you to do so. Okay, so let's do one that's a little bit messier looking. Let's take a look at, that's the TIFF version. Let's see, this is the raw version. Yeah, there's the raw version. Let's take a look at that one. And this is like a snapshot. That's all it is. So how do we control shadows and details in this particular situation? We look at our shadows all through here. We look at our highlight details all up through here. They're all interspersed in. So the channels are so good of targeting detail, you can use those channels to separate those shadows and highlights. All right, let's go and open that one up. Let's go Command R. And let's go make sure the lens is applied. Let's go ahead and open the object. Have some fun with that one. Okay. Now, let's let's take a look at the channels. Just kind of give a good look. Red channels, green channels, blue channels. Now, your channel harbors specific information about your image. The red channel is the contrast that exists in your photographic image. That's why you're seeing the red channel being more extreme in tones, brighter whites and darker blacks. Your greens harbors all the mid-tone information in your file. That's why using a Bayer pattern on your sensor harbors more green pixel sites on your sensor than red or blue. Your blue harbors is pretty much a lot of the ultraviolet light and the dust and crap in the atmosphere have a tendency to show up in the blue channel. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to determine which one separates these values the best. So let's go ahead once again, Command click right on the RGB value just to make an overall alpha channel and see what it looks like. Okay, there's a blue, there's a green, there's red, there's alpha channel. The alpha seems to do a little bit better once again. All right, so red and then alpha, green and then alpha, blue and then alpha. Okay. After a while, you won't even need to do this. You just look at an image and you'll know pretty much what to do. So we're going to utilize alpha 1. So I want to target the highlights only first, and then we're going to kind of go to more of the shadow areas. Command click on the alpha channel once again. Same process. Now we're going to hold all three keys, Control or Command, Option or Alt, Shift, and then click on the alpha 1, and that changes your selection so that it's going to select more of the brighter areas over everything else. So I will go ahead and create a alpha channel from that. There you go. See? Already is isolating your highlights over everything else. I'll do it one more time just to see what it gives me. So everything else is going rich. The brighter areas back there are being separated out pretty well. Command click, make my selection from the alpha channel. Why? Because selections and channels are exactly the same thing. Then I'm going to go Command Option Alt Shift all three modifiers and then click right onto this. It restricted the the selection to the more brighter areas of the image. Now I will create an alpha channel from that and see what we've got here. Okay, so that's better, but I need to control these values and let the brighter values come up. If I go to alpha 2, the one before, you get to see a lot of the sky is brightened up here. Here, a lot of the sky is being avoided, and we're targeting more of the brighter areas in the background that the sunlight is hitting on. This one I think is going to work great. So I'm going to enhance those white areas. So image menu, apply image to itself, but this time, let's see, Jason, I believe it's the crane rigging. They use the ports for moving shipping and containers. Yes, this shot was done in San Francisco. I forget the particular area. My girlfriend lives up in the Bay Area. So whenever I go visit her, we go shoot together. And this is one little area she takes me to. It's a huge industrial complex or shipping area. A lot of the places are abandoned, graffiti everywhere, broken glass everywhere. It's great for texture shots. Great for abstract shots. Okay, apply image. Okay, now overlay was there by default. I want to go this time instead of overlay. See, that's normal there. I want to go over to screen there. That brightens it up, or color dodge or linear dodge. Linear dodge works better, right? It's brightening up those brighter values back there. Let's do it one more time. So it doesn't always work the first time, so we'll do it again. So apply image. There we go, much brighter. It went back to my linear dodge. Let's see if there's another color dodge. Okay, color dodge works better because it keeps the blacks blacker, but the whites whiter, as opposed to linear dodge, as you can see, starts to brighten up some of the darker mid-tone areas. So color dodge, we'll go with that, and I think that'll work all together. Okay, so I've just isolated my higher values from my lower values. Now let's go create something from this. Command click on that, create a layer adjustment layer. So curves will honor the selection and put into its mask that particular alpha 3 that we just created. All right. So now we can do several things. I can go immediately to my curves and start messing around with the values in this system, or I can come in here and play around with, let's go ahead and hit the F key and go to full screen. I can learn to control the highlights through the use of layer blend modes here. So let's go ahead and click here and see the whole image. And let's see what we want to do with these highlights. If I want to bring the highlights down in value, I might use a blend mode of multiply. See, it just made it rich, a lot richer. If I want to brighten them up, I might use a blend mode of screen, as you can see here. And you notice nothing else is being touched that much with the exception of those highlights. So we just masked out those contrast values. If I go to something like overlay, that gives it brightness, but also contrast. And sometimes just mousing over these adjustments will help you kind of use your imagination there. So I'm thinking, let's go to, let's see, color dodge, color burn, gives it some contrast and some richness. Linear burn, darker color, darken. Yeah, it's a difficult one on this one. I'm thinking maybe go with the keep it with detail. I'm liking, let's go with multiply. Okay, so we brought down these highlights a little bit. Let's go in here and actually deal with the shadow details, because we've got some beautiful, beautiful details in these cranes, right? But they're blocked up. but they're all blocked up in here. So let's see what we can do with this next mask. All right, let's go back over to here. And if we target this, I'm thinking, let's flip this. So duplicate that channel. That was the one we just finished using. Let's flip it, Command I. And I'm thinking what I like to do is isolate more of the brighter areas here, which in this case are now the shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Command click to grab all those bright areas. Next, I'm going to hold all three modifiers down, Command or Control, Alt or Option, and Shift, and click right on that adjustment, and that brought it down lower. So if I actually go to create another mask, you can see there it's starting to isolate more of the brighter areas. I can do it again. Just hold all three modifiers down and click it again, and then make another mask. And there it is, okay? All right, so now we're doing a better job of isolating the shadow details. As you can see here, it's the sky is coming down. Now let's go Command click on it. Let's go get another curves. Click on the curves itself, okay? And remember, we're looking at these shadow areas. Let's try a blend mode, see what it does first. Now, these darkened ones obviously is not what we want, right? It really targets those. Let's go down here. It really targets those smaller, those deeper areas, make them brighter. So we're going to want to bring them up in value. So let's go to the lighter screen. See that? So I'm pulling out that detail. All right, I'm pulling out that detail. What if we go to something like color dodge? That contrasted linear dodge is not bad. I'm thinking, let's go to screen. See that? Pulls it out quite nice. All right, so we can still edit this mask. If I come over to here, target the mask itself. Remember, if I option click on the mask, this is what I'm getting. I can add a curves directly to this mask. In other words, Command M for curves, or image menu, adjustment curves. Bring this back around. And image menu, adjustment, go to curves. There we go, bring that on over. And I can edit the mask directly here. So let's bring it back over this way a little bit more. So I can make the blacks blacker. Looks like the whites are fine. If I bring the whites up, keep them there, but make those richer tones just come down lower, right? Then I can isolate the shadows a lot better. So let's actually do this, but let's actually view what we're doing. Click on the mask itself. Let's go to my image adjustment. Let's go to my curves directly. Let's see what the mask is going to do. So let's bring down the deeper tones. And as you can see, the sky is starting to become more richer, more isolated. And if I bring up the brighter areas, it helps to isolate just these shadow areas a lot more. So does that make sense? Looking at the, okay, so suggestions for protecting against solarization. I would say, don't try to do it all in one curve. Build up curves on top of each other. Make subtle adjustments. So solarization is when you're trying to do too much into one channel. So do one adjustment channel and just do subtle adjustments and make another curve and build up on top of that, just subtly. And then use your Gaussian blur to help blend them together a little bit too. That was from Andrew Taylor. That question was from Andrew Taylor. Right, so looks like questions were popping up here on the Zoom side, but it doesn't, I guess not. All right, cool. All right, everybody's talking to each other. Okay, so let's get out of this one. Let's go to.
And just so you're aware, we're at the 7:16 mark, and we still have
Okay.
minutes for, yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna do just one more real fast one.
Cool.
And then I guess we have to do the giveaway, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. All right, let's go with this one here. Okay, let's just pull everything together that we've learned. That's already set, lens flare. Now, pull out the color. Color's in our way. We're starting in ACR. So we'll start in ACR, work this through ACR, then bring it into Photoshop and do a little more magic there. Let's get a little bit closer here. Go to my shadows look like they're a little bit blocked up in here, especially back in some of these little bit areas. So I'm gonna pull out a little, pull up the shadows a little bit, and you can see I'm starting to see strands of water coming through there, some of these little shadow areas that I couldn't see before. Okay, so once I pulled out a lot of that shadow, now I'm going to push back in the lower values utilizing dehaze. Pull this down, richer, richer, richer. Okay, nice. Okay, that's looking a lot nicer. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. I'm liking this. All right, go to my highlights. Let's see what I can do with this. So if I pull it down, that's pulling detail in my highlights, bringing it up. That's making it brighter, but I want that detail in there. Bring it down a little bit. That affords me the ability to kind of bring up exposure just slightly. There we go. That's it. All right, now let's go over texture, which is contrast adjustment and the highlights only. I want to zoom in more. There we go. Look at the highlights. Bring over the slider. See that? It's targeting the highlights only. Look at that. Looks like it's sharpening up. It's just adding contrast to the highlight areas. Okay. Now, contrast to your midtones. Go to the clarity, pull it over slightly. There we go. Got a little bit richer in some of these areas, but you can see there's more drama going on in here. Next, pull the saturation up. Much more dramatic. Look at that. I can bring it all the way over. It starts to get a little garish, but this one, the lighting was so low to begin with that bringing it closer to zero might work better. And there's a lot of depth in here. Now, once you're in the color here, it doesn't hurt to kind of play around with the sliders and see what you get, but I find that it's better to work in black and white mode first.
Stephen, we do have a few requests from people that love to see the before and after as you're working through. If you can.
Absolutely. Sure. That'll be great.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We'll see before and after. So I'm going to go ahead and open the object. Okay. So there's my original object. So now I want to think about what is the primary point of focus here. And I'm thinking it's pretty much this area right in here. So a couple ways I can deal with this. I'm going to make this another black and white. I'm going to duplicate the layer. And because it's a smart object, I'm going to go to image menu adjustment, and this black and white adjustment applied to this smart object, it's going to make it a smart filter. If I come over here and click and drag around, it's going to adjust the values in this image based on the color, but we don't really have a lot of color in here. So we just want to make it black and white. That's the goal. In fact, this particular piece, I'm going to put into a layer group, Command G. And I'm going to call this group black and white. So before and after. All right, now, here, I want to bring the eye to the lower portion. So open up this black and white group, place another adjustment up here, and I'm going to put an adjustment layer of curves because I'm going to use a flatter value system so that I can bring the viewer's eye to this lower section. The problem is that this upper area here is very contrast oriented, therefore it's competing with the whole image. So if I take my curves down here and flatten out that background a bit, I can now use other techniques to apply this to the background but not to the foreground. So let's bring it down like so. All right, now I'm going to target the mask, hit the B key from our brush, and make sure that I'm painting with black. Hitting the X key to switch my foreground and background color, and I'm going to slowly bring out, there we go, and paint with get out of overlay mode to go to normal and pull this out here. Okay. And we're going to start to paint in, like painting and lighting. All right. The goal is to bring the eye right here into this area in the foreground, not to the background. We pull this out here, bring in our lighting all through here. Let the background recede. So I'm using, flat values for the background, contrasting values for the foreground. And this is the way I'll always work in all of my landscape. Bring that out, let the eye come here. I might consider hitting the X key and bringing some of these highlights down just a little bit. All right, I can do it this way, or I go back and paint them out completely. Or I can use the other way where I actually go and take a look at the channels and determine which one of these channels. Now, since this is all in black and white, I can use any of these channels. So I can command click on the blue, for instance. I can make a mask out of that, click on that, making a mask out of this one, and then intersecting it to bring down, to make that. See what I'm doing? Now I can utilize this to control the highlights of the water in the foreground. So command click, add a adjustment layer of curves there. Now with that curves, I can decide what to do with just those highlights. And it's only going to be applied to that foreground the most, because I can always edit this background out. So this is the background. Okay, just clicking on this and then applying my paintbrush and taking this out with black. Okay, so you have that option. Okay, see? Pulling that down, just taking it down. That's all you need to do, just a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and get out of here. There we are. That's down even more. And I might want to do techniques to kind of bring up some of these areas in here. So that's the way I'm controlling my values and my tones in my image to help bring my work, actually make my work more expressive. Now, once I'm done, this is my black and white layer, right? Now I'm going to apply this to the color. So if I duplicate the color, for instance, and I apply a hue and saturation, a desaturation. So if I apply image menu, adjustment, hue and sat, take out all the color. All right, take a look at this. The reason we have this color here is because we have these values. These values is giving me this result. I don't want those values. I want these values to be applied to it. All right, keep that in mind. I don't want these values. I want those values. To do so, I simply target that group, tell it to not touch color, but instead only apply to the luminosity values. There. Now your color image is a little bit more expressive. So if you want to see before and after, let's go back and get the other image. Go back to bridge. There it is. In fact, I'm going to, before I do anything, let me do this. Let me go back to Photoshop because a lot of these are still smart objects. Let's go here. Go to my color, pass through. I want that to be luminance. Thank you. I'm going to go here and I'm going to just rasterize that layer. So it's no longer connected to the smart object. So that means I can right click on this one, come back over to develop settings and clear all those raw settings. And I'm going to open this up in Photoshop. Shift double click, I think will open directly in Photoshop. There we go. And bypass raw. Let's go put these channels back into here and let's bring them side by side. So windows arrange tile vertically. We'll move this on off side here. So this is your before and this is more of your after to your left. Okay, so hopefully this has caused you guys to kind of think about how you might like to approach editing your images. I'm going to put down here a link to the workshop, Going Beyond the Lens. Now, this workshop is 4 weeks long. So we meet once a week, 2.5 hours each week, but we're building something, we're creating something. We're going from scratch to build something completely different from the single image. And we're going to be applying a lot of these techniques. We're going to be applying a lot of brush techniques, a lot of compositing techniques to create something much more dynamic and interesting. So check that out. And I'm also going to place the link inside of Twitch. There you go. For everybody online. So this is probably a good time for questions because we're going to be going toward the giveaways.
Yes, we're at the 7:30 mark. And before we do the giveaways, if you are typing in your questions, if you have any last questions, go ahead and add them in the chat right at this time. And I'm going to go ahead and give Stephen a huge thank you in advance and at the end to thank him for this wonderful presentation. Great questions, great commentary, great demo of all of the cool things that you can do with the tonal values, all the different techniques. I love that he incorporated in several of the Adobe tools and being able to see how those work and interplay together. So Stephen, thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to have Jennifer come online. Jennifer Cohen is our Adobe Creative Cloud Community Evangelist. Okay, and Stephen, you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen.
I can stop sharing my screen. Okay, you've got it. So let me stop share there.
There we go. And Jennifer, if you want to come on your camera, you can do that.
I just tried to do my camera, but it says I'm unable to start it.
Oh, let me see.
it might be like a setting. But while she's looking, I agree with everything Anissa just said. Stephen, that was an amazing demo.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer.
I wish I could actually use Photoshop more during my daily routine at work, but no, but hi everybody, thanks for joining. I'm Jennifer Cohan. I work with the Adobe community team, and I'm thrilled to be able to join the user group meeting. This is fabulous, thank you. I'm so glad that Daniel reached out and invited me to join, and it's great to be here.
That's awesome.
Good to have you here.
Glad you got to meet everybody and join us for this our inaugural virtual user group meeting. This is one of probably the first time we've done this using Zoom, of course. So
that's great.
Many more like this.
Yes, we're loving that everybody's able to join in. I do want to say we do understand that there were some technical difficulties this evening between the Eventbrite and the Zoom integration. Zoom is aware of that. They've been doing a lot of security updates, so we're keeping an eye on those, how that's working out, and we'll be able to address that in the very near future. So everybody that came in and had a little issue getting in, thank you for your patience. Appreciate that. So Daniel, I've got some numbers ready. You
All right, so
pick the winning prizes.
We'll have two winning numbers pick a number between 1 and 150.
Okay, so I'm choosing my random number generator right here on my phone. Thanks,
Right.
Google. And the first random number is 111.
And the winner is Gina Leslie.
Hey,
Her.
Great.
Gina is in the chat.
Congratulations.
Congrats, Gina.
Gina, are you still here? Type us a message and let us know. And we've got your email and everything. She said, yes, I'm here. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. And tell Gina what she's won.
A year of Creative Cloud.
Yay.
Very cool. Very cool. 1 year of Creative Cloud.
I like Jennifer's picture. I like her avatar. That's
Yep.
cool.
She's using that double exposure.
Yeah. That's
By
cool.
the way, you can get that on the Adobe Photoshop camera app
No.
on iPhone.
I was
Okay.
lucky enough to get that done by one of the creative residents at Max like 2
Right.
years ago. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes. That was really cool. Our second random number and our second winner of Adobe Creative Cloud, number 30. Daniel, tell us who it is.
Marty Rollo.
Marty, are you here? Let's see. I do not see Marty on the list. They may have taken off for the inning. Is it a winner must be present, or is it a we've got their email and we'll forward it on?
Up to you. What do you think?
No, that's not my call to make. We had quite a few people that were here, and we're trying to hold on to make it for the raffle, but we did go a little bit over time. So let's.
Do you have their email address?
Yeah.
We do have it, Daniel.
I have all of that on
Well,
a
then let them have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let them
Yeah.
have it.
We're gonna go with that. Is that cool?
Yeah.
We're good. We're good. All righty, everybody. Thank you again so much, Stephen. Thank you for the presentation.
All right. Thank
You
you.
did a fantastic
Thanks,
job.
Steven.
Everybody in the
Welcome,
chat is
Daniel.
saying congratulations. Charles wants to know, how do we get the video capture? We are going to take the recording, the finished recording, and put it up on our laprofessionalsgroup.com and on our Facebook page. Daniel, if you have any other places to send it out or you want to send it via email, that would be awesome too. And we'll let everybody know. And Beverly says, Hannah, are we getting Zoom drinks soon? Yeah. That's a winner right there. Photoshop on the iPad. And there were some major Adobe updates this week for Fresco, for Adobe Capture, and quite a few other tools. So keep an eye out for those as well.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for having
Last
me.
comments? We're good. Thank you.
All right.
I'm going to leave the room open for just a little bit for those folks that are chatting. And I think you guys have the ability to save the chat. If you want to keep the links, you can look to the lower right corner of your chat window and find the little button with the 3 dots on the right side and click there and choose Save Chat if that's available for you. I know that's not on iPad. One last question. What is ACR?
Adobe Camera Raw.
There we go. Adobe Camera Raw. No Kindle makes me sad. We understand. Zoom's not quite there yet. Let's see. Any other? Fresco is not available for Kindle yet. No, unfortunately, Fresco is currently only available for iPad Pro, and my understanding is the newer Surface Pro, Microsoft Surface Pros are able to run Fresco as well. It has to be a high-end tablet in order to do that. All righty. I'm leaving the window open. You guys can chat, and I'll leave it on for about another 4 minutes. And thank you again, everybody, for attending. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Wonderful evening, and keep an eye out for your email and your Facebook.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
You're most welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.